Hi, everyone. Welcome to the 2021 COVID edition spring formatting and submission workshop. If you're submitting your dissertation or thesis this semester, or maybe even in the summertime, all of the information here should be relevant. So what I normally do when I host these things is I talk about, well, I go to the graduate school site and I'll show you guys all of the important things you need to know about, well, where to get to the stuff you need, basically. And I talk about the formatting requirements and then like the defense and submission procedures and that sort of thing. So if you have any questions along the way, go ahead and interrupt me. I get a lot of the same questions all the time. So if you feel like maybe it's a silly question, it's probably not. Okay, so let me figure out what screen I want to share. This one. Okay, graduate school homepage, right? I hope that's a yes. Okay, so here we have the current students tab. And if you're not already familiar with this tab, you definitely should be, because it has just everything that you could possibly need in there. Forms for everything, academic petitions, and you have to complete a petition for just about everything you want to do in the graduate school. And then there's thesis and dissertation information and graduation clearance. So first I'm going to go to thesis and dissertation and talk to you guys about formatting. So when you get there, you go to manuals and templates. And let me see here. We have like a formatting manual, which you should read. It's very short. It's only like 5 pages long. But what's really super helpful are the sample pages. And so I'm just going to go through these with you and just point out some important things about the formatting. You can take a closer look later. So what we've got here is, marked in red are some, important things that I have to pay attention to. In general, with the formatting, I try to be as lenient as possible, but there's a few things that are non-negotiable. So here's a sample title page, and everybody's title page needs to look like this. So what we have here is 12-point Times New Roman. And as you can see, the title is all in caps and it's single spaced. And all this spacing between the text, like it says, that's exactly what you should make the spacing, when you create your title page. The margins need to be at least 1 inch all the way around. We used to require that the left-hand margin be 1.5 inches. So you might hear that from people. You can make your left-hand margin 1.5 inches if you want to. The reason we used to do it was for our library binding. So it's probably easier to do just a 1 inch margin. When you put your tables and figures in, even that 1/2 inch makes a huge difference. And then down the road, if you want to do our library binding, which we're not even really offering at the moment since we're not on campus, you can always reformat your work. It's not that big a deal, really. So I would just say do 1 inch margin all the way around. Obviously, the text here in the center should reflect your degree. So you could say a dissertation, you can say a thesis if you're a master's student, you can say a doctoral scholarly project if you're a nursing student. Those are the options there. And then you would say, Doctor of Philosophy or Doctor of Business Administration, change it to whatever your degree is and your persuasion here. And then the date is the date that you submit your dissertation to ProQuest. So if you might say defend in the fall of 2021 and then end up not submitting until the spring of 2022. So you would put 2022 there in that case. And the approved by lines, you'll see they're nice and neat and tidy and lined up here. And you just have, you know, the name of your chair followed by the rest of the committee, and you don't have to have anything other than Dr. So-and-so. So you don't have to say, you don't have to put a bunch of initials after their name. If they have a bunch of other credentials, you don't have to put where they work or anything like that. It's just Dr. So-and-so. And another thing to notice is there's no page number on the title page, although it's counted as page 1. But yeah, so no page number. That should be pretty straightforward if you just do your title page just like that. The second page is, well, as you can see here, it's where the page numbering starts with a Roman numeral 2. You can actually put your page numbers in the top right corner, the bottom right corner, or the bottom middle. It's your choice. Just make sure they're in the same spot for the whole dissertation, obviously, or thesis. So this is the copyright page, and we can talk more about copyright later if you have questions, but basically you should include a copyright page even if you decide not to register your copyright, because your work is, you do hold the copyright to your work whether or not you register your copyright. So yeah, you put your name here, you put all rights reserved. And another little thing about your name I should mention is whenever your name appears, so on your title page, the copyright page, the abstract page, and when you enter it into the metadata in ProQuest, make sure your name's the same in all those spots. So if you're going to use your middle name, use your middle name, or if you're going to use your married name, use your married name, or whatever, just make sure you're the same person everywhere. And the same goes for your title, because a lot of times people will, their title will be slightly different on their abstract page than it is on their title page, and it'll just be a little bit wonky. So I check for that. I make sure everybody's title, you know, looks the same, it's consistent. So make sure your title, make sure you keep it consistent. So yeah, so the third page is the abstract page. Just like you see here, you put abstract all in caps, you put your name all in caps. You can put the title of your dissertation in normal title caps, like any sort of like headline, that's, you know, title caps like you see right there. And then your committee chair's name is in all caps. And then your abstract, generally the text of the dissertation or the thesis, pretty much the whole thing is double spaced. And so, you know, the text of your abstract will be double spaced. There's not a word limit on it. So, you know, it can be as long as you need it to be. And even when you submit your work to ProQuest, when you add the abstract to the metadata, you can also add keywords. So that will help you get more hits, you know, when people are Googling your topic. The acknowledgements page, technically it's optional, but everybody has an acknowledgements page and a dedication page. You probably want to dedicate your thesis or dissertation to somebody or your pet. That happens a lot, actually. And then we have the table of contents. And there's some flexibility with the table of contents depending on how your dissertation or thesis is set up. So like your chapters, you may have subsections or you may have multiple levels of subsections. So, you know, sometimes people will, you know, maybe the chapter 1, the subsections would be 1.1, 1.2 under there, or chapter 2, you'd have 2.1, 2.2, something like that. A lot of people devise a numbering system that makes some kind of sense. Hang on a sec, I think I have a comment in the chat box. I'm like really, I'll get to questions in a sec here. So let's see, what else was I going to say? Oh, and then, yeah, if you have any tables, you have to have a list of tables. And if you have any figures, you have to have a list of figures. And, you know, if you have a whole lot of abbreviations, you would want to have a list of abbreviations. Why am I having so much difficulty grabbing the chat box here? It doesn't want to open for me. I think this is because, you know, we've moved from WebEx to Zoom and it's bothering me. Whatever this question was in the chat box, if you just want to interrupt and tell me, that's fine.
Or I asked a question. I asked if we should use Roman numeral numbering throughout the entire dissertation.
Oh, for the page numbers, you mean?
Yes.
Okay, so actually, all of the front matter is numbered with Roman numerals. That's a good question. And then when you get down here to the first page of chapter 1, that changes to regular old Arabic numeral 1. And I think actually we included at the beginning of this, let me see here. Yeah, so there's a little bit of information here under the second bullet point for how to insert a page break, because within Microsoft Word, it's kind of tricky to go from Roman numerals and then start over with page 1. So those instructions on that first page should be able to help you. Okay, let's see. Oh yeah, so so here's a sample list of tables and a sample list of figures. And so you'll see that, you know, these are the first things listed in the table of contents right here. Although technically I see that actually this is not what we have in our table of contents. That's a mistake. But yeah, anything that comes after the table of contents appears in the table of contents, and nothing that comes before the table of contents should be in the table of contents, if that makes sense. So you don't put your abstract in the table of contents. And then, you know, with the list of abbreviations, you don't have to have corresponding page numbers for all of those abbreviations, because obviously they would be occurring all over the place, you know, in your dissertation, so that wouldn't work. All right, so yeah, so we start with page 1 here, and then you just keep numbering continuously through the rest of the dissertation, through your reference section or your bibliography, whatever you call it in your field. And then if there are any appendices, they come after the reference section, and then you're done. That's the end. And this is just an example reference section. It doesn't look like anybody's style guide, I don't think. So the graduate school expects everyone to adhere to their field's own style guide. So if you use APA, stick to APA to the extent possible. If it's, you know, Chicago style, MLA, whatever it is, that's what you need to stick to, because that's what you need to know for yourself professionally. So yeah, everybody's reference section is going to be a little bit different. And then the appendices, you know, all sorts of supplementary material shows up in people's appendices, you know, stuff that just didn't fit very well within the dissertation or thesis. So, you know, you want it to fit within the margins, whatever it is. If you've got tables or figures in your appendices, give each appendix a title, like this one has a title, and that appears in the contents. And actually, on the topic of tables and figures, that's another thing that you should pay attention to, because you can't have tables or figures or other material extending out into the margins of your work. So you can't have material out here on the edge of the page, you know, it has to be within the margins. And so that's, you know, one of the things that, you know, we have to check for when you submit your work to ProQuest. It has to fit in the margins. And here's an example of a table that's been rotated. So as you can see, this table is oriented landscape-wise on the page, but it has to be rotated back 90 degrees to portrait mode. And this is ProQuest requirement. This is not a graduate school requirement. So if you have any really wide tables or figures, you would put them on the page like this, rotate the page, and then move the page number so that it's in the same spot as all the rest of the page numbers. And I think we added some instructions. Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of information here about creating a next page section break so that you can rotate individual pages and get your, you know, tables going the proper way. So it's a little bit of a pain, and I'm sorry, but that's what we have to do with them. Do you guys have any other questions at the moment about formatting mechanics?
I had another question concerning, you said we should use the style guide of our discipline. So if I'm using APA, as far as like bolding text within the dissertation, is that okay? I've heard kind of two versions of that.
Yeah, definitely. I know that APA has really specific guidelines about what your section titles, how they should be formatted, and your subsections and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, do what APA says to do. If something conflicts outright with something that we have specified in our formatting manual, just shoot me an email and let me know, and I'll figure out what needs to be done. Yeah, because like this is sort of like, you know, ProQuest has a few requirements. The graduate school has a few requirements. Everybody's style guide has a few requirements. And I kind of need to see sometimes which one wins, you know? So yeah, just let me know if you're confused about your field style requirements and ours. We'll figure it out.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Anybody else have any formatting questions?
Hey, Dr. Young,
Mm-hmm.
do I have to rebuild all my tables into Word format, or can I high-res embed them from Excel?
You can do whatever you need to do as long as that table appears properly on the page. Like you can like do a screenshot and insert it. You can whatever, as long as the finished product looks okay, then that's fine. So as long as your table is fitting in the margins and as long as it actually displays on a computer screen, however you get to that point doesn't really matter.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, no problem. I know it can be such a pain getting tables and figures onto these pages. So whatever's easiest for you guys.
I have a question about code. How should code be formatted?
Like how so? What do you mean exactly?
Like computer code, so like Python code that you wrote that was used to like analyze data or something.
I mean, I see code all the time, of course. People put it in, you know, sometimes people will have it like in an appendix. Sometimes it'll be right in the middle of the dissertation. As long as it fits within the margins and the font is big enough to read it, it really, from the formatting perspective, it doesn't really matter. If that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Because sometimes there are just pages and pages of code, you know. I mean, I guess usually people probably put that at in an appendix. It makes probably more sense to do that. And I guess sometimes the text I know nothing about coding whatsoever. I'm from a humanities background, but a lot of the time the text of the code will be in some different color other than the standard black of the rest of the text, and that's fine also. But other than that, we don't really have any formatting specifications. If you have some really big material that doesn't fit in your dissertation, like if you have some sort of like humongous maps or anything like that, you can also upload supplementary material alongside your dissertation when you submit to ProQuest. So for those of you who might have some really humongous file or something, that can be uploaded separately, and you can just reference that within your dissertation or thesis. Anybody else have any questions?
I have a question as for the list of abbreviations. Should they be listed alphabetically or listed as the order they appear all through this dissertation?
The abbreviations. That's funny. I've never actually really thought about that. I guess whatever makes sense. Let me see. I inherited some of these sample pages, so let me look. This seems to be in alphabetical order. That makes sense to me. But you know what, for something like that, you could look at other dissertations within your field and see what other people have done. So either way, whatever makes the most sense for your field, you can do that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Hi. How can we check for margins in LaTeX or Word while we're writing?
If you're in Word, you go to layout. Let me see if I can pull this up and show you. Because it should be, I think it is just under layout. Can you guys see this Microsoft Word page that I have here?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, if you go to layout and then you go to margins, you'll see here, this is a normal margin. So you would know that your margins are at 1 inch if you have it set to normal. If you wanted to do the 1.5 inch on the left side, by the way, you would go to custom margins and just specify that. But yeah, I mean, if you have it on normal, then your margin should be 1 inch all the way around. Then I guess if you go to add tables or figures, I would say, you can just sort of look at it and see whether or not your figure is like going into the margin, because you'll see if it's going like any further than the page number normally, then it would be in the margin. And if your text is justified, it makes such a nice crisp line on the edge, then it would be just super obvious if you just scroll through, before you submit your dissertation, just to double check. It should really jump out at you if anything is actually going into the margins. And for some reason, it's normally the right margin that gives people trouble. It's rarely any of the other margins. So
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I hope that helps. And then, when you guys do submit your work to ProQuest, if you're a doctoral student, I'll be checking your formatting at that point. If you're a master's student, well, at the moment, Julie Green checks the master's formatting, but I think within a couple months, I'm actually going to be doing everybody's formatting. So, so it's nobody else at ProQuest checking the formatting, and it's not some sort of like, computer checking your formatting. It's actually just me. And so I just go through there, I check the formatting. If there are any issues, then I just send you a request for revisions, which will come from ProQuest actually to your email box. So it's really not a huge deal. If there's an issue with your formatting, you just correct it. So, and that happens all the time. There's nothing to be too stressed out about. So on that note, yeah, I could talk to you now about defense and submission procedures. Let me see here. So I'm going to go to graduation clearance. You guys are seeing the graduation clearance page, right? Doctoral checklist. We have two checklists. There's a master's checklist and a doctoral checklist. They're pretty similar, so I'm just going to go through the doctoral checklist. The doctoral one has more requirements actually. So, so at this point, if you're here in this formatting workshop, then I'm assuming you've probably at least proposed your thesis or dissertation. So you've probably gotten through these milestones. Let me see here. So probably the next thing you need to worry about is applying for graduation. And that's a requirement. If you want to graduate, you have to apply to graduate. So I tell people, if you think that you might finish your dissertation or thesis and actually get it defended and submitted, definitely apply for graduation, because it's much easier to just, if you don't manage to graduate, you can apply to graduate the next semester. But it's a huge pain if you don't apply to graduate, then you have to file a petition in order to graduate and do all this stuff. So point is just apply to graduate by February 24th this semester if you think you're going to finish. Yeah, all the deadlines are right here in these milestones for everybody. So formatting, we're doing formatting right now. If you have any formatting questions after this workshop, you can always email me or email Julie Green. We're happy to answer any questions. If you are, totally freaking out about formatting and submitting and everything, we can have a meeting. We're always happy to set up a meeting. So let's see here. So the final defense, that's the next deadline that comes along. It's later for master's students than it is for doctoral students. So if you're a master's student, check the master's checklist. So for your defense, whether you're a master's student or a doctoral student, you obviously need to get your work to your committee ahead of time so that they can actually read it. If you're a doctoral student, you have some added requirements. You need to submit your dissertation to Authenticate if you're a doctoral student, and that's a plagiarism checker. If you've never used Authenticate before, there are just a couple things to note. It's not the most agreeable interface ever. You submit your work and it can be kind of confusing how to use it, but basically you submit your work, it takes a few minutes, and then it creates this thing called a similarity report, and it highlights all sorts of bits of text that it thinks are similar to other bits of text that it found elsewhere on the internet. So when you get that report, you should not freak out too much. It'll highlight all sorts of common combinations of words and all kinds of stuff. So basically, what you need to do is go through your similarity report, read it yourself, share it with your committee. They can look at it. If you discover at that point that you accidentally forgot to cite someone, then that's your opportunity to correct any mistakes like that. Otherwise, it's totally normal for a lot of stuff to be highlighted that is not plagiarism. So you just need to look at that for yourselves. That's not something that I'm going to scrutinize myself. Nobody else in the graduate school is going to do that unless there actually is some sort of an issue. So just take a look and correct anything you need to before you submit your dissertation. You need to submit your work to Authenticate and share it with your committee before you defend. And if you're a doctoral student, you also need to submit your dissertation defense announcement right here. And that's just because our defenses are public. We're a public institution. I would recommend don't put your Zoom link straight in the announcement though. There's a field for location and you could just type in that field, email me for the Zoom link or whatever. So for both master's and doctoral students, when you defend, your committee will sign your final defense report and they'll sign your title page, and both of those go to the graduate school. If your committee is not completely satisfied with your work, if they want a bunch of revisions, then they may hold on to your title page until you've made those revisions, but they should submit the final defense report. If they need to hang on to the title page, maybe they won't, maybe I won't receive that until your final submission, but the defense report needs to be completed. Actually, it should be completed and submitted regardless of the outcome of your defense. So God forbid your defense does not go well at all. They still need to submit the defense report, but don't worry about that. Your defense will be fine. For doctoral students, that deadline is April 19th this semester. The final submission deadline is always a couple weeks after the final defense deadline. And like I said, it's later for master's students than it is for doctoral students. So for the final submission, everybody has to submit their work to ProQuest, which I've been mentioning, obviously. That's an online repository. Many universities require that their students submit their work to ProQuest. So your work will go into ProQuest, and then our library will harvest your work from ProQuest and put it into our institutional repository, which is called Niner Commons. So through Niner Commons, your work is going to be freely available to everybody, everywhere. So in order to submit your work, you have to pay a $45 submission fee through this payment portal right here. This confuses a lot of people because when you go to submit your work to ProQuest, it'll say that you owe $0, but that's because you owe us the $45. Actually, you pay us and then ProQuest bills us. So it's confusing, but you definitely have to pay the $45. That's the basic submission fee for everybody. This other $75 that's mentioned, that's if you want ProQuest to register your copyright for you, that's a $75 fee. Copyright is entirely optional. So, or copyright registration, I should say, is entirely optional. So you can pay ProQuest $75 to register it for you. Or if you want copyright, but you don't feel like paying ProQuest, then you can go to copyright.gov yourself and register your own copyright. And it's $55 that way. It's just obviously less of a hassle, to pay ProQuest to do it for you. So, so that's the payment portal. Oh, there's one more form, the submission and ETD form. Everybody has to submit that, whether you're a master's student or a doctoral student. There's also this survey of earned doctorates. It's just for PhDs. So if you're a master's student or DNP or DBA or EDD, you don't have to do it, just the PhDs. And the certificate of completion comes straight to me when you finish. So you don't even have to let me know that you did it. It just comes. So, and then we have the link to ProQuest. And by the way, all these final steps under the submission milestone, the survey, the ETD form, the payment, all this stuff, it really doesn't matter what order you take care of all this stuff, just as long as you get it all done. And if you're forgetting anything, I'm definitely going to bug you about it. So you will eventually get it done, basically. But anyway, so here's the link to ProQuest. What you do is you go to ProQuest, you create your account. You'll have a few questions to answer about search engine discoverability and that kind of thing. You upload your work as a PDF, and then I go in there and check your formatting. And like I said, if there are any issues with the formatting, you'll get a request for revisions. And then once your formatting looks good and I've got all your paperwork and I've got all your signatures and your payment, then I deliver the work onto ProQuest and you'll get an email that says, congratulations, and you'll know you're all done. So at that point, I also update your final submission in degree work. So you'll see that little bit get checked off. And actually, as soon as I get the final defense report, I check off final defense and degree work, so that you should see that happen as well. So you don't have to worry at all. You see all the stuff happen right in front of you. You get the confirmation email, degree works updates, so you don't have to worry if anything else needs to be done. If anything else needs to be done, like I said, I will let you know. So yeah, that's how the submission goes. You guys have any questions about the defense or the submission or the application to graduate or any of those pieces?
Hi, good morning.
Morning.
I was wondering, when do we need to submit our announcement by, the dissertation defense announcement?
So I think we say 2 weeks before, yeah, at least 2 weeks prior to the defense.
Okay.
I would say as soon as you know when and where you're going to defend, as soon as you have those details, just go ahead and submit it. And actually, I don't have any way of checking to make sure you're submitting your defense announcement 2 weeks before your defense, because if I don't know when your defense is, obviously I can't check that. But yeah, just submit your defense announcement as soon as you can before you defend.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And actually, you guys, I have to go into the graduate school website and approve all those announcements. And, it may take me a day or two. So it's not something that just automatically appears on the website. And speaking of something else that doesn't automatically happen, when you pay your submission fee and copyright fee, if you choose to do that, if you want to go ahead and forward the payment receipt to me, that will be hugely helpful because the payments don't show up on my end. It sometimes takes a really long time, and I can't finish processing your work until I know that you've paid. So if you go ahead and just forward that receipt to me, it'll make things a lot quicker. Let me see, any other questions? Okay, well, I guess we can wrap things up then. But like I said, if you have any questions, if you think of anything, just send me an email. It's ara.young@uncc.edu.
Sorry,
Oh, go ahead.
can I ask a question? Well, actually, two questions. One of them is, I am doing like 3 paper formats. So in this case, there isn't any specific format for 3 paper dissertation. Am I right?
Well, we do have the 3 article, I'm assuming, hang on a sec, where is it? I assume you've seen this 3 article dissertation guidelines, right?
Yes, I have.
Okay, yeah, so as far as formatting goes, it's basically the same as the regular dissertation, you know, like the sample pages I showed you, like the title page, the front matter, it should all be the same like that. There's just, you know, a few extra specifications for the 3 article guidelines, like, you know, for each article, you're going to have your own, you know, the introduction, yeah, the individual
Subsections. Yeah.
subsections. Yeah. So, but as far as appearance goes, as far as formatting goes, it's not really different from the general formatting.
Okay, thank you. And one more question about like copyright issues. So when we submit our article to, like we have to submit our like articles to a journal, and when it's got published and getting like that copyright, like that always confuses me. So I don't know what exactly like it has to be done at that point. Do you know anything about it?
Yeah. I mean, for you and for anybody else with specific copyright questions, you know, you can always reach out and we'll try to figure things out. But so anything that goes into your dissertation, if it's already been published elsewhere, obviously it has to be cited properly. If you're talking about an entire article that you're putting in your dissertation that was already published in a journal, you need to go look at that agreement that you have with that journal and read what that journal has to say about your work appearing elsewhere. So check that. If you're confused about the language or whatever, you can send me a link or a screenshot and I can try to help. We also have a copyright lawyer in the library who can answer these questions better than I can. So sometimes I have to refer people to her. So that's one thing. If you have a whole article that's already published and you're putting it in your dissertation, normally that's fine. But check the language with the journal. The sort of reverse of that is a lot of people are concerned about the material in their dissertation later appearing in a journal. And usually that's also fine. Sometimes on rare occasions, journals will not want your work to have previously appeared on ProQuest. Sometimes we have to issue an embargo and delay the release of your work in ProQuest. But for the most part, it's not a problem because ProQuest is a repository. It's not another journal, you know, so it's not like your dissertation or a part of your dissertation, you know, appearing in ProQuest. It's not the same as if your dissertation were in another journal and then you tried to publish it in a separate. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Okay.
Okay, yeah. But for all of you guys, if you have any questions, like I said, about copyright or like citing your work, citing other people's work that appears in your work or citing your own work that appears in your work, just let me know.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Any other questions before we wrap up? Okay. Well, thanks for joining me, guys. And yeah, shoot me an email if you have any questions or concerns. I think I may put this video up on our YouTube channel. So I'll send you a link if I do that. And enjoy the rest of your day and have a great week.